Hello everybody, this is Mewtwo Overkill here once again. I'm going to be giving you a deck profile of the new Pentacle Challenge. Well, it's not really the Pentacle Challenge, it's more of an extension of the Orichalcos Challenge. This has the same rules and everything. It's just I have a different deck to pick from other than the standard Orichalcos deck. Obviously inspired by Revelations of the Seal of Orichalcos, the Pentacle archetype is probably my favorite archetype in the show so far. And I will show you why as we get into this lovely deck here. First up, we have the Seal of Orichalcos in all its glory with all the anime effects intact, and one terraforming to add it to the hand. Now we have two Pentacle Gear. This was the first card played by Chimera in Revelations of the Seal of Orichalcos. And he's actually pretty harmless. As you can see, he's got that 0 attack and defense. I mainly put him in here just because the deck doesn't feel complete without him. And he may go eventually, but for now I run him at 2. I did... This build is actually a little different from the ones in my previous duel videos, just because I ironed out a few flaws. And then there's going to be more support coming in the future. But what Pentacle Gear does is, once per turn, if it would be destroyed, I can discard a card instead. That's all it does. If you know how Pentacles work, then you'll see why that's useful. One Morphing Jar. Yes, this is a challenge deck in its early stages, so I like to test the waters with of the format with a few banned cards. So Morphing Jar, it's pretty slow, but you flip it up, and both players discard their hands and then draw 5. Pretty good. And if you know how Pentacles work, you want to discard cards as much as possible. Pentacles are basically Dark World on crack, is probably the best comparison there. So we have our first monster spell, I guess. The Pentacle of Iron. Now, when it's a spell card, you equip it to a Pentacle monster, and that monster gains 700 attack. But what's special about Pentacles is that whenever the Pentacle spells are sent from the hand to the graveyard, they get special summoned from the graveyard as monster cards. And as monsters, they get all new effects. Like, for example, when the Pentacle of Iron is sent from the hand to the graveyard and then special summoned as a monster, on summon, he banishes my opponent's entire hand face down, and they don't get those cards back until my next standby phase. Pretty darn good, but it's one of the few stun aspects of the deck, so I kinda needed him. I might cut this guy to 1 if he still proves to be too overpowered. Next up, we have one of the most useful ones, so I run him at 3. This is the Pentacle of Solomon. As a continuous spell card, whenever I draw a Pentacle monster during my draw phase, I can reveal that, or any Pentacle card that can be special summoned by its own effect, as well as any Pentacle monster. I can reveal that card to draw 1 additional card once per turn. So if you have like 2 of these on the field, you can reveal the same one twice and draw 2. It's pretty good. And as a monster, he's a 3k beater that, whenever he kills a monster by battle, you draw 1. Pretty darn good. This one's probably my favorite, the 5th Pentacle of Mars, because it makes Monarchs cry, and I despise Monarchs. So what this thing does is, whenever, as a spell card, it's a hand trap. Whenever my opponent activates a spell, I can send this from my hand to the graveyard and negate and destroy that spell. Then when it gets summoned as a monster, while 5th Pentacle of Mars is a monster on my side of the field, my opponent can no longer activate spell cards. So it's basically an Imperial Order in that sense. But it has low attack, so you can just run it over with something easy. That's the big downfall, but it does stop those, it does stop those pretty devastating spells. Another hand trap we have 2 of is the 2nd Pentacle of Jupiter. As a hand trap, a spell, I send it from my hand to the graveyard when I would take burn damage to make that burn damage 0. Then, as a monster, the effects of all my opponent's continuous traps are negated. Then, once per chain, when my opponent activates a trap card, I can pay 500 life points to negate that trap card and destroy it. Pretty darn good. It's like a Jinzo. except I have to keep paying. Now I have 2 of the Pentacle of Healing, and this is a continuous spell. During each of my end phases, I gain 500 life points times the number of Pentacle monsters I control. As a monster, I can target a Pentacle on my side of the field and gain life points equal to its attack. Then for the last of the Pentacle spell monsters, we have the first Pentacle Moon. This one's probably the most powerful in some sense, just because it has 3,500 attack when it's a monster. And as a spell, it's a normal spell. I can activate it, discard 1 card, so that's good. And then I target 1 special summon monster on my opponent's side of the field and banish that target. Pretty good. And then while it is a monster, when my opponent has already special summoned a monster, and they special summon another monster, I can pay 500 life points to negate that monster's summon and destroy it. Pretty darn good. Then we have all the draw support, the pot, the upstart, the graceful. Card destruction is insane in this deck if I get the right hand. Mirage of Nightmare is also amazing in this deck, as well as Graceful Charity. And then to clean up the Mirage of Nightmare, we have 2 Mystical Space Typhoons. For that, in case I want to get rid of the Mirage. Now we have triple Twin Twisters. Now this is where Pentacles exceed where Dark Worlds lack, because Pentacles can come back from the graveyard even if they're discarded as a cost. Pretty darn good. So Twin Twisters becomes a +1 essentially, or a 0 out if I can only destroy 1 card with it. So that's that. And then 1 Raigeki and double Dark Hole for the monster clearing. For traps, 1 Bottomless, 1 Judgment, 1 Warning, 2 Strike. And then there are 3 cards left in the deck, and I did this. He is a monster, but I wanted to save him for last. This is Pentacle 0 Terra God, the infamous monster Chimera summoned against Travis the Trainee and nearly destroyed him with. I have yet to bust out this guy in a challenge, so I'm not going to reveal his entire effect, but if you watched the show, you get the basic gist of it. Now, like I said, there's no extra deck yet. I do have lots of support planned for the deck, as you can see by that big stack of cards. In fact, I might implement this deck into the second stage after this video. But, like I said, they're not only... like I said, the Pentacle monsters, they become the Pentacle spells become monsters when they're discarded and special summoned from the grave. So, I did, so when I summon, like, a Pentacle spell, like the Pentacle of Iron, I do something like this to represent its form as a monster. That's exactly what they did in the show. So we have the Pentacle of Iron here, just his effect as a monster printed on there, and he just comes out like that. And then we have Solomon, we have Mars, we have Jupiter, and the Pentacle of Healing, and the first Pentacle of the Moon. So that is the new Pentacle deck. My new extension of the Orichalcos challenge. So now I have 2 decks to choose from whenever someone challenges me to whenever someone accepts the Orichalcos challenge. So it's essentially just something I really wanted to do. I really like Revelations of the Seal of Orichalcos, and the Pentacle as I said, the Pentacle archetype was my favorite archetype in the show so far, because it's just so different. And so big shout outs to Dead Soldier Productions for, if you haven't seen the show, go check it out. It's really good. Bit cheesy at times, but with any fan-made series, that's kind of to be expected. But anyway, this has been Mewtwo Overkill.